Welcome to the FiPL Farm Diaries, brought to you by the Yorkshire Dales National Park Authority. FiPL stands for Farming in Protected Landscapes, a programme funded by Defra that helps farmers and land managers in England's national parks and national landscapes access funding for projects supporting climate, nature, people and place. In each episode, we'll dig into a particular part of a project that's received FiPL funding. And while we focus on one theme at a time, every story is part of a much bigger picture, showing how these projects and people are working together to shape the future of farming in the Yorkshire Dales landscape. Join us as we meet the people making a difference and discover how farming in protected landscapes is delivering for the Dales, one story at a time.
Welcome to the third episode of the FiPL Farm Diaries. So this episode is all about using audits and surveys on your farm to get a starting point and to be able to plan for the future. So the first business that we're going to speak to is Kingsdale Head. So we've got Jamie McEwen and Catherine Bryan. Kingsdale Head is part of a much bigger landscape recovery project, but before they started that project, they wanted to get a baseline of where they are now in terms of biodiversity and various other things. So let's hear what Jamie and Catherine have to say.
So I'm Jamie McEwen. I'm the Conservation and Farm Manager at Kingsdale Head. So essentially I'm responsible for delivering the FiPL project and everything else that happens at Kingsdale Head. Yeah.
And I'm Catherine Bryan, and my husband Tim and I bought Kingsdale Head 5.5 years ago. And our intention was to regenerate a landscape, bring in a more diverse set of species across the landscape.
Perfect. Okay, so shall we start then with your, I suppose, monitoring and measuring? What was the FiPL bid that you put in? And I suppose why? Why did you feel that it was important to get that baseline before doing anything?
Well, Kingsdale's a big site and quite a complicated one, I suppose. We've got loads of a whole range of habitats here and a whole range of potential for the site, and it's just really important for us as we got started on that journey to get a really good baseline of the site and understand where the site was at as much as where it could be, and then especially going into some of the FiPL projects and the change in management, it was really important to sort of understand how that connected to all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so we'd done some baseline surveys, but I suppose we wanted to pull it together in a more cohesive picture, and also we knew that going forward, in terms of the financial sustainability, we needed to be able to bring in revenue from more, if you like, conservation type revenue streams. And so the FiPL funding gave us the opportunity to work with a consultant to really pull together a full overview of the site, including some of the monitoring we'd already done, plus some additional.
Brilliant. And how was that? How was the actual process of doing that? Was it arduous? What did the surveying actually entail? And then how was that information presented back to you?
It's trying to understand a more complex picture of the site, I suppose. So we had individual surveys that looked at things like our bird population, we had some invertebrate survey work, looked at bats, and I guess it was trying to build, and this is always the challenge, I suppose, with biodiversity, is trying to pull together all of those bits of information and get a picture of what that means for the site, which is not so straightforward. And that's what that consultant was trying to help us do, really, is pull together an overall picture of the biodiversity for the site.
Yeah. And when you're looking at alternative revenue streams, you have to be able to demonstrate that you've achieved an improvement in biodiversity. And part of that is also trying to get natural processes to work more effectively. Yeah. And the consultant we were working with, I suppose, was looking at things not just about populations, but also connectivity across the landscape, variability within the landscape. So I suppose feeding in some slightly more complex measurements. And that's something we can review periodically as our work proceeds.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that you said that. I was literally speaking to another farmer this morning about this. It's all right counting specific populations of specific species, but if exactly as you said, if the connectivity is not there or it's out, the ecosystem's out of balance, it's kind of irrelevant, isn't it? It doesn't.
It's not sustainable over the long term.
No. So, what did you find? Anything that you didn't expect, or what did you find? All sorts, I bet, up here.
Yeah, I guess we had a good picture of the farm in our mind from working and living here, I suppose. But it's we didn't have any specific. I don't think there's any.
I don't think anything surprised us. I think the interesting thing about their approach was they were looking at what the potential uplift was. So how much more diversity of species could we get in the landscape? And they have a certain perspective on how you do that. And so I think the interesting thing for us was to see what they thought the uplift was, and where, how, what species, what types of habitats, compared to what we were already sort of planning and thinking. And I don't think they were hugely different, but there were definitely things there that just made us think and think about what we were planning.
Yeah. Okay. So, Catherine, you were talking about diversity of income stream. Can you just give us a little bit more detail for anybody that's listening? What did you have in your head for that? Like, what were you thinking that this could equate to in terms of revenue?
Well, we know that obviously there are various, when we bought the farm 5 years ago, there were various schemes on offer from Natural England. This had been an HLS scheme. We did apply for a CS scheme, but actually we did struggle to agree with Natural England, the grazing regime that we were happy with our cattle. They had concerns around the cattle grazing around the peatland. I suppose from what we had seen and what we'd read from other research papers, that cattle would not harm peatland restoration. But we did sort of get to the point where we just couldn't agree a way forward. And the grazing regime for us is key. It's one of the key disruptors in the whole system. How you graze a site is one of your levers to get more diversity into the system. We knew that grazing cattle was really important. And if we were limited just to those field parcels with no peat, we'd be grazing a tiny part of the site. And so actually that was another reason why we accessed FiPL. To receive a grant that enabled us to receive a revenue stream around conservation grazing. So this is one of the revenue streams we expect to continue, because we expect the outcomes of that grazing to be really positive for the site. And Jamie did a huge amount of work on understanding the right grazing levels and putting that to the national park.
Yeah, I think the countryside stewardship schemes were quite prescriptive, and I guess they looked at the farm on a kind of parcel by parcel basis. And the vegetation is quite complex, and the impact of the grazing is quite complex. And we have these big parcels here of being a big open hill farm, and it's quite hard to have the impact that we wanted on a kind of parcel by parcel basis. So the FiPL project let us look at the site more holistically, I suppose, the whole site, and with a better understanding of the habitats there, we could design a grazing plan that made use of open valleys, limestone influence, grasslands and heathlands and things, places where the cattle could have a really positive impact without having that negative impact on the peatlands.
So we've got a familiar voice for this next guest. We can remember James' new house from episode 1. James got a FiPL grant to put in hedges to break up his grazing so that he could start to rotational graze. But when he was looking into doing that, James got advice from quite a number of sources, but there was a lot of farmers that told him to do some baselining before he started so that he knew what he was starting from and he could measure the changes going forward. So let's hear what James has got to say about that.
So James Newhouse, 41 years old, so married to Amy, 2 kids, Elkie and Ned. We live in Preston in the Yorkshire Dales. I'm a farmer. I've been a farmer now for 5.5 years. Previously to that, I worked at Rolls-Royce for 20 years in aerospace. Got through COVID and then decided it was a good opportunity to purchase some land off a local estate that was selling up. That local estate sold us 133 acres up on the tops of Preston, in between Preston and Settle, 1,000 foot up, rough pasture land, but great for the animals that we now have. We have some land in the village that my dad's purchased over the years and we rent. So altogether we're about 145, 150 acres. We run Belted Galloway cows, all purebred, and we have Swaledale and Herdwick sheep. Elkie's 8 and Ned is 5. And that's our family.
Right, James, you spoke on a previous episode about your rotational grazing and what the work that you're doing there. And you also mentioned that you've done a lot of sort of baselining audits to get an idea of where the farm currently is now. Can you talk us through what you've done?
Yes, yeah, no. So we've done quite a few audits through the FiPL programme. The main 2 that we did was a farm carbon toolkit audit, and then we've done an ecologist survey with Haycock and Jay. So the farm carbon toolkit was really to give us a full understanding of our soil, and they will come. We spent about a week here doing understanding carbon, understanding organic matter, doing your normal soil testing to give you an understanding of pH, etc.
Yeah.
But more for us was the detail behind that and where our soil was, where our depths of soil were. So we've got a full overview of the land and what we need to do with it. So, for example, it gives us knowledge that if we've got some really thin soil and low organic matter, that's maybe where we'd bale graze.
Yep.
So we can start to link things up, which before understanding that and probably being educated, I wouldn't have known that that's what we needed to do.
Yeah.
We also understand certain fields where we could maybe restore them into being a hay meadow. So certain fields, we've got that knowledge that it's the right type of soil, and we've just worked with the Yorkshire Dales Millennium Trust to restore one of our hay meadows. So they've come, we've harvested seed from Tom Lord's, and we've brought that seed, drilled it in, and planted that meadow. And because we had the knowledge of the soil, that meadow this year has just flown. I mean, the diversity we get is tremendous.
Yeah.
And Kate Roberts, who is our soil guru, does a lot of training courses. After learning from her about different soils and what to do and all this sort of thing, she's helping link the 2 things together. So you need a diverse sward. She always says that if you're a human having a salad and all you've got on your salad is lettuce, it's rubbish.
Yeah.
If you're a cow and all you've got is grass, it's a bit rubbish. You want all the different things. So if you want clovers, you want all the different flowers, you want a diverse sward. And that really stuck with me, that explanation that she gave us. And that's why our idea is, from the data that we've been given, is to restore that meadow, use then that sward and those hay bales to bale graze across the land. We'll buy some in from probably Neil or someone like who has species rich already to try and create a really diverse sward all across our fields with grasses that have different roots so they can access different nutrients, deeper soils. It can start to break up the soils if we've got compacted soils. Better for the insects, better for the bees, better for everything. So that has been, that having that knowledge from that audit or from that farm carbon toolkit assessment really has helped. Alongside the ecologist report. The ecologist report was good, but it was very, very detailed.
Was it? Yeah.
Which is good, and it gives us that knowledge of every field, what we've got, and all the different species. Very complicated. I don't understand a lot of it, and I've had to get a lot of it explained. But we do have a baseline, and by bale grazing certain fields, when we redo the assessment, we'll know if that's worked or if it hasn't. So it's good to know that this is where we are before we start doing what we're going to do. Is the plan. We've also, they're the FiPL funded ones, but we've also had a national park dung beetle lady. So she came out and did an assessment to understand where dung beetles are, because obviously we outwinter cattle. And we're in a really good position for that. So that's good to know. So we now need to do more things to support them. We've had soil tests, we've had water runoff tests. We've kind of done a lot of things alongside the FiPL bid to really kind of understand where we are. Really.
So let's just go back to dung beetles then, because everybody loves a dung beetle. There's a lot of talk about them in the industry at the minute. What's your understanding of why they're important, James? Like, not just from a nature point of view, but every farm's a business, isn't it? It needs to be profitable. And how does this sort of biodiversity, dung beetles, all the other creepy crawlies, how does that support the overall profitability of a farm, in your opinion?
It's a good question. So this is where Kate Roberts will be watching this. And
make sure you get it right.
So for me, the worms, the dung beetles, all show that you've got living soil. So we talk about living soil and making sure that at the minute, when I first came into farming, the way I would want to grow more grass is by chucking more manure or more slurry or more till or more whatever to get it to grow. The thing Kate always says is the soil has everything it needs. Stop making it lazy. So what we're trying to do is, through having worms, dung beetles, it shows that we have a soil that's alive. We haven't killed it through pesticides and everything else. They're eating all the parts of the soil and turning that into nutrients that they can then turn those nutrients, which means the grass can feed off the nutrients.
Yeah.
Well, that's a tough question.
Yeah.
But that's my understanding, that having that, and you open up that soil and it's full of worms, or you open up that cow pan, it's full of dung beetles, it means it's alive, which means that grass is going to be able to get the nutrients. Which better grass. And Kate always has a squash from a supermarket, breaks it all up in a tub of water, and the water's still clear. Get the squash from her garden, where it's been grown organically and properly in soil that's alive, and you break it all up and it's orange, and it's really orange. And that was like the moment of, oh my God, this really is, it's not just about the soil, but it's about what you grow and how good that thing is you grow. And it's the same for an animal. If you've just fed it rubbish or just grass, it's not going to be as good for you as the one that's been grown off, grass that's got all the nutrients, all the good stuff, not just grass, the forbs, the leg, all the different things that make up the diet. So if you can grow grass that's better, the animal will perform better, and a better performing animal means more profit.
That's I love that phrase from Kate about stop making your soil lazy. That's brilliant, isn't it? Because that's exactly what's happening. And I think with so much talk about nature friendly farming, there's a bit of a stigma with some people, or they just want us to farm nature. They're not bothered about us producing food. Well, the two are very linked, aren't they? Totally linked. Like, you can't have one without the other.
No, definitely not. And when you look at living soil and you look at, to get your microscope, and look at fungi and microactivity and nematodes and protists and all that sort of stuff, and you see it in your soil, it's like, oh yes, brilliant. It's one of those moments. And when we first looked and we saw nothing, the difference, and now we need to see that transfer into the sward and then into the animal. But yeah, Kate has really helped me to understand. She's probably pushed me less nature, but more think about animal performance alongside nature. Because when I first did it, I got a little bit too naturey. And you need to do animal. As a farmer, your job is to produce really high quality animals, whether that's for breeding or meat or whatever. But also you've got to look after the environment and nature. They definitely go on. If you go down the route of just leaving grass to grow as long as you want and don't graze it, I don't think that's the right way. You've got to use your animals on the land and definitely like work it together.
So when will you next? So you've done your baseline with these things. When will you next do any more testing or surveys or whatever to check the difference? How often should you be doing that?
So when I spoke to the people who did the reports, they talked about 5 years.
Right. Okay.
So my view is 5 to 7 years. I think depends when we finish off the last of our people fund, the last of our splitting the fields up. But I would say 5 to 7 years is a good period. But we're measuring grass, animal performance. We're tracking everything. To see, can we see a difference through this? Because I want to be honest with you, in 7 years, if we're not getting that, then that is learning as well.
Yes, of course.
I mean, I don't think we will, but you never know.
No.
So this actually gives us proper data from doing it. We've all, but I think it's not just soil though, but also the trees and the hedges. I think will make a big difference. She always talks about test the soil next to your hedges because that'll be a lot better performing than out in the fields. This summer we went up when it was really warm, and we have one tree near a pond, and all the cows were under this one tree trying to get a bit of shade. And that was another moment of cows need shade and they need trees. If you're going to put them in mob grazing or rotational grazing and you're splitting your fields up and they've nowhere to get shade in the summer, they're not going to perform. So that's another part of animal performance. So we've put 21 infield trees in. We've dug another pond in, and we're trying to, because the cows love to be in that when it's red off. So it creates for nature, but it also does for the animal. So it's just all learning. Some of it we'll have to probably take out and put back if it hasn't worked, but it's just a process.
So you spoke about your ecology report being quite detailed. Who have you, apart from Kate, who you've already mentioned, who else has helped you sort of interpret that data? Because I must admit, it's a bugbear of mine. There's so many audits in the industry at the minute that people have as part of a supply chain, and not like yourself where you want it to know. People sort of have to do them, don't they, for various supply chains and whatever else. And then you get your report and it sits unread because it's not easy to read. You said your ecology report was really detailed. Who else has helped you? Like, presumably the Yorkshire Dales National Parks are brilliant at helping out with that kind of stuff.
National Park, but as part of our FiPL bid, I think it was Helen Keeper who said this to me, include in it the person to come and explain to you what has been the report.
Yeah.
As part of that, they came to the farm and took me through the report in English.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, some of the words in the ecology report were crazy. But when he came and I could ask the questions in my language, and that just helped massively.
Yeah.
So I think if you get a report and you try and read it, it's so dull and it's so complicated.
Yeah.
I needed the people to come and explain to me, and they came and they did it, and they were great.
And there's no point having one done if you're not going to do anything. What's the point if you're not going to use it to your advantage? And there will always be something in there that you can use, won't there?
Yeah.
You know, that's uses information to guide your decisions. So, can you pick a favourite? Which one has been made the biggest impact on your farm? Which survey or audit or anything that you've done?
Farm carbon toolkit audit.
Yeah.
That's been really good to understand the organic matter side, because Angus said to us, you know, when you think about grazing, what are you doing? Are you doing that strategy for organic matter, sequestering carbon, or are you looking at animal performance? And we've then been able to use that report to decide what we're going to do with certain fields.
Yeah.
And that it all kind of clicked together. And it's only just recently clicked together. But it all clicks together that we can use that report now to do that with that field that helps that animal perform in that way. And I feel we've got everything we need now to be able to just crack on and do it. Obviously, there's a couple of bits of infrastructure which we're just about to put another FiPL bid in to finish it off. So hopefully we're successful, and then we're at a point where we're ready to go. And then, you know, ultimately in my FiPL bid, we said in 5-6 years' time, we hope to be at a point where we've done that learning and we can start helping to show what we've learned in an education setting.
Yeah.
So that would be great, that at the end of it we can show, because there's all these people who want to moan about farmers and cows and everything else, and I want the data that shows actually if you do it in the right way, this is what it shows you, and this is actual evidence.
So the third and final guest that we've got in this episode are Gemma Wilson and Steve Dunning. So Gemma is the facilitator of the Orton Fells Farm Cluster Group, and she also works for the Loom River Trust. And Steve is a dairy farmer who is involved in the Orton Cluster Group. So this is a little bit different, because it's not just talking about baselining soils or carbon or anything else. They've actually done some financial baselining of the members of that group, which I think is absolutely vital. You can't plan to make changes without knowing where you are financially. So let's hear what those guys have been up to.
Steve Dunning, farm at Resgill Taybe, sheep and dairy, 200 dairy cows, fetch and puddle our own young stock, and sell about 70, 80, 90 calves a year, beef calves, straight into the beef trade off the cows. We don't fetch them up. Member of the Orton Group, Farm Cluster Group, chairman of the group at present moment, and really happy the way it's going.
Gemma Wilson, I've facilitated the Orton Farm Cluster since just after it began, I think, part-time, and for the rest of the time I work for the Loom Rivers Trust as a project/farm advisor.
If I start by asking you then, just give us an overview, well, both of you, from both of your points of view, about the Orton Fells Cluster Group. How did that come about? Why? What? And what have you done, I suppose?
Basically, where we all came together was when we came out with Europe, we realised that payments wasn't going to be as good, or weren't going to be even there as time moved on. We felt as individual farmers averaging about 150, 160 hectares. We didn't have a lot of clout as one person, as one business. We come together and effect it together with about 2,500 hectares. We have a bit of clout.
So carbon auditing, talk us through that, Stephen.
Carbon auditing started on this farm in 2013 because we were a Nestle producer, and they were very interested right from start about going down the road, both from our point of view, but from their point of view, selling out into the big wide world. Their customers are now looking for working with farms and working with businesses that are trying to do it as carbon negative, as low carbon as we possibly can. So when it came to the cluster group, each farm was given a carbon audit, where we came together afterwards and benchmarked and talked about it. They were quite interested because we were a bit farther down the road than maybe what they would be at, because we've done this deep core soil sampling, looking for sequestration over 5 years as to how much carbon a farm like ours might take in, which isn't just our farm, because it would work right across all the clusters of farms. So I'm really, really interested in that one. So it's 4 years now since we took the carbon samples. There's another year to go, and then we're going to go to the same places on the same farm using the satellite to take cores again, and we go down 1.5 meters.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of carbon actually way down you don't know about.
Deep down,
Dung beetles and worms and everything else is taken down over hundreds of thousands of years. So we're really interested to see how that's going to work.
I was just going to bring it back to the group in that FiPL has allowed us to look at whether it's a potential income stream, because it's talked a lot about in like farming publications, and it's the next best thing. And it's allowed us to answer the question of, is it possible for us right now to make any income from carbon? And I think the answer was, not necessarily in your case, Steve, because you're using it in your supply chain, but for a lot of these projects, let's say, it's absolutely pushed onto farmers that they should be looking at these alternative markets. And actually, with a lot of what we're doing in terms of environmental outputs with our hedging and field parcels with trees in, it is not on a big enough scale to warrant selling any carbon. We would actually be in a deficit through putting it through the carbon auditing process. So although we've come to that conclusion, it's allowed us to understand where we sit within that, and it is a no. And we've also looked at soil carbon and lots of different things, and just really delved into that area and allowed each business within the group to decide, is this something I want to look into or not? And essentially that was one of our main goals.
Give each business an understanding of it as well. Because it's not simple.
No, it isn't. And I imagine the benefits of being able to discuss it as a group, discuss your reports as a group, and figure out why people are different and what the actual practices are that are going on that are making it different must have been a big plus, because a lot of people get those reports and just don't know what to do with them.
Well, no, you put them in desk.
Tick
that box. That one. But actually, if you work with it, there's a lot of things you can do.
That must have taken some facilitating, Gemma.
Our FiPL funding allowed us to do a pre and post meeting it was carbon metrics at the time, and that was really useful because it gave everybody a broader understanding of carbon, not just in like the UK agricultural industry, but worldwide, didn't it? And see how we sit within that and where future markets might be heading, which I think got a buy-in from everybody. And then that was just really great for us. I think that was the icing on the cake, really, was to allow us to do that with our FiPL funding, to pay for that little bit of extra time.
Because I think there is a point where every farm's going to have to be carbon audited. Probably,
I think so.
But we managed to do it as a group through no actually cost to the businesses. It was done through FiPL.
And the thing that the other farmers that I've spoken to about doing various audits and surveys, they're brilliant if you use them, aren't they? They're no good if you don't. So how do you get the most out of them?
And the thing is, it gives FiPL an indication as to over a large area of land, different farming systems, to be able to see for them what different farms can do and what might be possible going forward.
So one of the other things that you've done, which is figuring out the starting point, so it's technically an audit or a survey, is you've done some financial benchmarking, haven't you, and some stuff with Chris Clark from Nethergill Associates, maximum sustainable output. That's a mouthful.
That's it.
Talk us through that. Why, I suppose, why did you decide to go down that route?
That was something that came through as I was looking at where our businesses were going to be after when we come out with Europe. Because we knew as soon as we come out with Europe, whatever Boris said, or the rest of them said, we weren't going to get as much money as we were getting out of the area payments and all the rest of the stuff that was going on. It wasn't going to happen. We realised that. So what we did was to look at the sustainability of each business within the Orton cluster for sustainability, to say, are we going to be busy fields at the end of this, or are we actually going to still be sustainable and be able to make money in each of the businesses? So that's where it came from, to talk to Chris.
It was a new approach to auditing, wasn't it? Because you completely removed BPS
Mhm.
at that point anyway, regardless of how much percentage you were still getting.
Yeah.
So that was quite a eye opener to me, because I was fetched up. I went to Newton Agricultural College in the late 60s, when if you weren't putting at least 100 units of nitrogen on 4 or 5 times a year, you weren't farming. If you didn't have 100 cows and weren't looking for 200 cows, then you might as well not bother with dairy farming. This is what was drilled into us.
Yep.
And if you didn't have an overdraft over 100,000, you didn't bother start being in business anyway.
Yeah.
So what Chris came to talk about was just the complete opposite of
Yeah.
everything I'd thought about dairy farming.
Yeah.
So the first 10 minutes he talked, I thought, this guy, I'm going to fall out with him. After half an hour, I was ready to throw him out through the door. But Michael was there and said, look, let's have a look at this, see where it's going. And he's on about this sweet spot, where you can produce food.
Yep.
After where where the sweet spot is, where your inputs fall behind what your outputs are.
Yes.
And basically, after you get past that sweet spot, you're not making money.
Yep.
Or you're making a lot less money. So you're better off actually environmentally and for your own business to, when you get to that spot, to stop farming and stop producing and stop banging stuff at cows like I was.
Yeah.
Cows come through a parlour, oh, she's doing all right, we'll give her a bit more, she's a flyer. And it just took us away completely from that.
Yep.
So we were at sort of 10.5, we were nearly 11,000 litres on the way we were doing it. What we looked about after talking to Chris was going into a rotational grazing system and drop the cows back to about 7,500, 8,000 litres, which is what we've done.
Yep.
There's loads of spin-offs to that as well we can talk about later on. But for our business, for my business, it was a complete change of direction.
Yeah.
And for others, it was and it wasn't. But what it turned out, at the end of the day, after we had the meetings in each individual business, then we came together to kind of benchmark, was actually all of the businesses were sustainable.
Brilliant.
Which he'd been down Wales on farms down there and come across farms that just weren't going to be sustainable at all. But it did give people a much different perspective on where your profits are going to come from.
Yeah.
Don't run after stuff that's not going to pay for you. And
Yeah.
that was one of the biggest things, honest, I think, that we really did.
Yeah, and again, we got that buy-in. So Chris was able to come up here pre-sitting down one-on-one, which I think helps a lot. Talk us through what he was going to do, which again, I just think, and then when you sat there with him one-on-one, it's slightly easier to take in what he's telling you.
Yeah. I just think it's fantastic that you've managed to do something like that with FiPL money, because yes, we have to farm with nature and we have to keep the environment in mind, but a farm is a business at the end of the day, isn't it? And that is the profitability of farms and the impact that has on the local economy and the community is massively important. And when we talk about audits and surveys and finding out a starting point, people automatically think we're talking about soil carbon and nature, biodiversity. But that financial sustainability of farming businesses is just as important, isn't it?
Community.
It is.
That was that was the main goal of the FiPL funding, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was financial, and we've made the environmental improvements
on
the back of that.
Yeah, well, one can't come without the other, can it? So that's just fantastic that you did that. And how was it? It's difficult, isn't it, sometimes? Well, people find it difficult sometimes to share financial information, and maybe you anonymised it, did you, when you benchmarked or not? Yeah, you did. But were people quite forthcoming and curious about each other's results and asking, questions and trying to learn from each other?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe some of these conversations didn't go on within that original meeting when Chris Clark was there.
No,
but I know they've gone on since.
Yeah.
Certainly between us and Mark, it has done.
Yeah. I guess, being involved in other groups, we're not the most talkative group, I wouldn't say, but everybody just likes to quietly think about how it will work for their farm business and just get on with it.
Yes.
Just because you're not talking, I think, together doesn't necessarily mean people aren't taking it away and thinking about it, and then we talk about it at a later date.
Yeah.